Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be getting stuck into Bonfire, the latest heavy Euro game from the mind of Stefan Feld. Stefan is famed for his strategic thinking games like Macau, Bora Bora, Bruges, Castles of Burgundy, though these are usually based on real-world locations, emulating history in some way. Bonfire, on the other hand, is set in a fantasy world full of gnomes and guardians and great bonfires illuminating the world. What does this stark change of setting mean for the game? Is Bonfire a mess of systems and pointy-eared gnomes, or is it a carefully crafted points potion? Let's get it to the table and find out. Okay then, this is Bonfire, set up for a two-player game. This is the main board, which is separated into two main sections. At the top we've got the islands. These islands are where the guardians retreated to in the game's story, leaving the bonfires to die out and plunging the world into darkness. I'm not sure how they made it there in the dark, but there you go. The islands are the places you'll need to visit in order to retrieve those guardians and claim the tasks in order to prove your worthiness to them. Down the bottom here, surrounding this bonfire, we have the High Council. When you manage to light a bonfire on your player board, one of your novices, these cute little gnome meeples or neeples, or whatever you want to call them, they get added to the High Council and then grant you a small one-time bonus for doing that, and also move you one step closer to triggering the end of the game. There's also these neutral novices sat around the edge. When you achieve certain things in the game, you're able to take one of those, put it on the High Council, again pushing forward the end of the game and giving you some additional bonuses. In the middle of the High Council, we've got the Great Bonfire. It's impressive sounding, and to be fair, it looks pretty huge when you compare it to the size of the gnomes. During the game, you're able to turn the Great Bonfire, which sounds like a health and safety nightmare, but when you do it, you're able to claim resources for doing so. And you'll get to add these really nice little portal tiles to your board, which you'll need in order to get the guardians to stand next to your lit bonfires and score your victory points at the end of the game. Below the bonfire, we've got these path tiles. The paths are what you need to add to your player board so that the guardians have got somewhere to walk around when they do their procession. Apparently they don't mind standing on these islands in the dark in the mud, but when it comes to walking around your board, they've got to have a nice little path laid out, the divas. And then finally we've got the specialists down here, these gnome cards. When you claim one of these, they give you ongoing bonuses and rewards in the game, and opposite those are the elders. Similar, you claim them in the same way, but they give you a one-time scoring bonus for claiming one of them. The aim of the game then, Kelspries, is to score victory points. To do this, you need to light bonfires. You need to complete these tasks that you find up on the islands, and then flip them over, and that is then a lit bonfire. That's a blue lit bonfire that's worth 3 points at the end of the game. You also need to claim these path tiles and these portals to enable your claimed guardians to make a procession around your player board and stand next to those lit bonfires to give you the most points. But how are you going to do that? Firstly, you need plenty of resources. These nice little wooden resources. There's some flowers, leaves, fruit and gold, I believe that is. And you need lots and lots and lots of these action tiles. There's several different action types, and let's have a look, see what they do. First up, we've got the boat tile. These boat tiles let you hire a pedalo and head out into the islands. Here's my little one. The islands are joined by these light channels of water. If I spend one boat token, I can move one channel of water to a neighbouring island. If I spend two, I could move along two paths. So I could come across to here and then all the way back to here, for example. If I spend three, I can move anywhere I like, to any island I like. You don't get to actually do anything once you've landed at an island. You need additional action tiles to do that, but we'll come to that now. The first one we can use is the receive a task tile. If you land at an island that's got these tasks on them, you can claim one of them. You can claim them immediately after landing on the island, provided you've got the necessary action tiles and resources. You'll need two things to do it. You need the action tile itself. You also need some resources. You need two different resources. One of them is printed on the island itself, so in this case it's a shell, which is this one here. The other one is printed on the offering stack topmost tile from your player board. In this example, I've got the leaves here, the mint, whatever you want to call them. I call them mint, I don't know why, they look like it. So I would need to have a shell and the green leafy thing. I could then trade in my action tile and my two resources. I could take whichever task I wanted, and place my flipped over offering to show my player colour that I took, that one there. This task then gets added to my player board. If I manage to complete the task, which in this example is to have any card and one of the green resources at any time, I can flip that over as a turn and claim this blue bonfire, which is nice. Next up, we've got guardian tiles. These actually have two uses. I'm just going to explain the first while we're up here looking at these islands. If you land on an island that's got guardians on it, you can pay one of these tiles, if you have it, to claim that guardian and to move them and add them to the starting tile on your player board. Now let's have a look at the bottom half of the board, starting with the path tiles. To claim these, we need, surprise, surprise, path action tiles. To get these is really simple. We pay an action tile and we claim the path that we want. The first three that go around your board cost 1. The second three cost 2 each. I choose the one I want. In this example, it would be this one with a pink crystal on it. And I place it in the next available slot around my player board. They start at the leftmost and go clockwise around your board. At the end of the game, I'll get a bonus if there is a pink lit bonfire adjacent to this one. And if ever a guardian lands on this space and finishes a turn, I'll also get the resource that's printed on there. In this case, it's a shell. Next up, we've got portal tiles, the ones that control the great bonfire at the bottom of the board. These are nice and easy. For every portal tile I spend, I can rotate it one section. So if I pay 1, I can move it here. If I paid 2, I could move it 2 spaces. And if I paid 3, I could rotate it wherever I liked. Wherever it lands, you get to claim 2 of the available 3 bonuses. So in this example, I could claim a blue flower resource, a guardian tile, or one of these 3 portal tiles. You can claim any 2 of those 3. Usually, you're going to be going for the portal tiles, as these need to be connected to your player board to give the guardians a path over to stand next to a lit bonfire to give you points at the end of the game. Each one is a different shape, and these, because they're contrary and awkward, have to be added in the opposite direction to your path tiles. So you start the furthest right you can and add them counterclockwise. Okay, 2 more actions to show now. We're going to start with the recruit a gnome one, which are these ones. They're brown ones with cards on them. When I spend these, I can claim either an elder or a specialist card. To do that, I either pay 2 tiles and 1 of the resources printed on the card. In this example, it would be a root, so I could pay 2 tiles and 1 root. The alternative is to pay 2 resources and 1 tile. I get to claim that a card, add it to my player board, and get the ongoing bonus then. In this case, it says whenever my guardian lands on a tile that gives me a resource, I actually get 2 instead of 1 from now on. The elders are claimed in the same way, but instead of offering ongoing bonuses, they grant you one-time bonuses. This one, for example, would give me 1 point for every gnome card that I've got added to my player board. And finally, we're back to the guardian tiles. The same ones we looked at earlier to retrieve the guardians from their islands. Now, as well as basically kidnapping these islanders, we can force them to walk our makeshift catwalk, like some kind of awful fashion show, or as the game calls it, procession. To do this, we must pay as many of these tiles as we want to, and we'll move 1 space for each of them. So if I pay 2, I can move each of these guardians 2 spaces. You start with the furthest one ahead, and they either move along the path, or if they're stood next to a lit bonfire and a portal tile in between them, they can move next to it. I get more victory points at the end of the game for doing this. If they land on a path tile with a resource on it, you immediately claim the resource. The one thing you can never have, though, is 2 guardians stood on the same tile. So that is a no-no. On your turn, instead of spending those action tiles, if you've achieved one of the tasks shown on your player board, like this one here, for example, which says if I have a grey and a blue guardian, which I did have, I've just binned one of them, but let's put it back on the board. So at any point in the game, if I have a grey and a blue guardian, I can light that bonfire. To do that, on my turn, I flip that bonfire, I take the little gnome who stood next to it, and I place them in the High Council, as we saw earlier. I then get a bonus from placing them in the High Council and move the game along 1 step closer to the end of the game. So the big question that's left, the question I can hear you all asking is, But Adam, how do we get all these action tiles we're doing all these actions with? Well, I'm glad you asked. To get these action tiles, we need to combine these fate tiles with this neglected space in the middle of your board. These fate tiles are put in this stack randomly at the start of the game, and on your turn, instead of flipping a bonfire or using your action tiles, you can take either the top or the bottommost tile and add it to your player board. The rules for placing them say that they've got to be orthogonally adjacent to an existing tile, which is a fancy way of saying they've got to touch edges. Whichever actions are shown on the tile, you take the corresponding action tiles. So if I place this here, I would get a guardian, a gnome, a card, and a boat action tile. Fantastic. Those go into my hands and I can use those on subsequent turns. If it covers one of these symbols on the board, like this gold, I immediately get that resource. Or if it was to cover this wild tile here, I would get another one of these wild action tiles, which can act as any other action tile during the game. These tiles can be rotated and oriented in any direction you like. Sounds simple, eh? Place a tile, get some more tiles. No. It's not. There's other things we can do. And this is where the fun comes in, where the planning is really important with this. If we place this tile, so it's touching an existing tile of the same type, instead of getting one of that, I would get 2 boats. And then it gets even more. So if I were to place it this way, so that both the boats and the name cards are touching, I would get 2 of each of those, as well as the guardian tile for placing that. And then later on again, if on my next turn I were to take this bottom tile and place it here, I would now get a path, a guardian, and 3 gnome card tiles. And you can see there's potential here to combo up really well. As well as claiming these wild resources and wild actions, you can position these tiles so that you can get loads and loads of tiles. It's this mini game that you're playing on your own board, trying to maximize the benefits of tile placement, which makes it feel like something like Patchwork or A Feast for Odin, or even Stefan's most famous game, Castles of Burgundy. So not only are you trying to do all of that other stuff, you're also playing this mini game on your own board where you're trying to maximize all the things you can take, like some kind of crazy Tetris. Play continues like this until there are enough novices placed on the High Council to trigger the end game. At that point in the game, the player who triggered it takes the stack of countdown tiles from the main board and places it here on their player board. Then for every turn they take from now on, they take the topmost tile, showing there's 5 turns left. They use that, pass it to the next player, who passes it to the next player, to the next player. When it comes around to him again, that goes back in the box. And now we take tile number 4. And play continues in this way until they're all gone, and then the game ends. Scores are calculated, the person with the most points wins. Bonfire then. Phew, there's a lot going on. And that probably doesn't come as a surprise to massive fans of Stefan Feld. Both Trajan and Bora Bora are good examples of him having done that in the past. The thing is though, anyone can throw a bunch of mechanics at a game to make it interesting, but it doesn't make it a good game. Happily, Bonfire doesn't do this, and the variety of different mechanics all marry together without anything spoiling the experience. It's like reaching your hand into a big bag of Revels, pulling out a handful and not getting a single coffee cream. It's brilliant, it's all tasty. Like in there, we've got the card drafting for specialists, and we've got the rondellesque market of the Great Bonfire. There's the island puzzle at the top of the board where you've got to maximize your movement and optimize things to gain the tasks and the guardians. And then you come over to your player board and you're trying to get path tiles that match the color of your tasks, trying to get the next portal you need to add to your board. And you get this wonderful tile laying puzzle to get the action tiles that you'll need to carry out the actions you want to perform in the game. And the way that each of these things isn't an exclusive puzzle is really nicely balanced. Every time you use a particular action, it's because you've got a plan for the things you're going to get out of it. I know that's usually true of most Euros, but this is one of those where resources are really tight and you'll very rarely find yourself with a surplus of resources or action tiles to use. One of the things I really like about Bonfire is this feeling that everybody's working on their own plans, trying to maximize their points, plotting what to do and when, but all the while that's happening, you need to keep an eye on the High Council in the middle of the board. Once a certain number of novices have taken their place in the High Council, the end of the game is triggered. There's also 5 neutral novices on the board, which any player can claim a place in the High Council at any time when they meet the correct criteria, like having 5 gnome cards or completing a set of tasks. The number needed to trigger that end game depends on the number of players playing the game. So when it's getting close to the end, and there's only 1 or 2 more gnomes to place before the end game is triggered, it turns into this really tense metagame of trying to second guess what your opponents might be planning or deciding, and trying to decide whether to bide your time to maximize the points you can get, or try and force someone else's hand before they get a chance to do what they wanted to do. Some games do this really well, like Great Western Trail or even Dominion. Bonfire is another one to add to that list. If I had to come up with an obvious negative for the game, it's for the players who are prone to analysis paralysis and taking an age over every single action. They could feel like board game sloths with this game because it really feels like everything you do really matters. Another factor to consider for Feld fans is the theme. It's a big break away from the traditional city-based games he does, and if that's what really gets you going and fantasy leaves you cold, I can see why Bonfire might not appeal to you. In all honesty, I'm one of those people who love the real-world locations in the games like Macau and Bruges, and I did have some small misgivings about how much I'd warm to a dark board full of gnomes and fantasy. Happily though, I can say that those fears quickly evaporated for me. I found myself so drawn to the game beneath the aesthetics that it honestly didn't matter. I love the polyomino laying puzzle to get action tiles. I love the direct player interaction where you spend ages formulating a plan in your head of how you're going to get these tiles to do these things and sail to that island and claim that perfect task, only for some git to come along and take it from right underneath your nose. Adaptability is a key to doing well in Bonfire. You can have all the plans in the world, but when someone takes the bonfire, turns it and makes the next portal impossible to reach for you, you better have a plan B, or that's not reaching across the table and throttling the opponent. Bonfire isn't a light game in any sense of the word, so I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who's new coming into hobby board games, or for anyone with a short span of attention, because they're just not going to get what's going on, and it'll turn into this overwhelming feeling of having no idea what's happening and be a real negative experience for them. But if you like your Euros thick and heavy, you'll get a really good kick out of it. It's so rewarding when you combo up something perfectly and end up with exactly what you want. It's that Hannibal Smith moment from the A-Team of I love it when a plan comes together. There's a full solo mode in the box as well, where you play against an AI opponent called Tom, and he's really difficult to beat. It's a good practice for when you haven't got players around you to play with. So yeah, Bonfire, awesome game. If you like your Euros, you like Stefan Feld, get it. Thanks for watching, and if you liked it, do that liking and subscribing thing that all the cool kids do now. Cheers, bye for now.